right, so we're diving deep into UX design today.
Sounds good.
And you've given us some excerpts from a project guide to UX design.
Yeah.
It looks like you want to go beyond just the buzzwords and really get a feel for what UX is all about.
Yeah, for sure.
It's more than just like making things pretty, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
This guide seems to be all about the nitty-gritty of how UX design actually works in practice.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
So, okay, let's unpack this.
Okay.
The book kicks off with a pretty standard definition of UX design,
Right.
creating and syncing elements that affect a user's experience.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting is that it emphasizes data-informed insights on user behavior
Yeah.
and perception.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like UX is this blend of creativity and cold, hard data.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to think about it.
That's interesting.
It's that data that helps us move beyond just, gut feelings and intuition,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Think about it. You could design the most beautiful website in the world, but if it doesn't actually meet users' needs,
Right.
it's useless.
Totally. And it's not just websites and apps we're talking about either.
No, not at all.
This book takes it further, mentions everything
Yeah.
from tangible products to sound design, even smell.
Oh, yeah.
They use this example of a bakery smell drawing you in,
I love that.
like it's UX for your nose.
That's great.
And that's such a good example of how UX is really about understanding human psychology.
Yeah,
What triggers us?
absolutely.
What makes us feel good? What makes us want to click that button or buy that product?
All those little things.
It's all connected.
Hmm.
It actually reminds me of a study I read about how the smell of cinnamon
Oh, interesting.
makes people feel more trusting.
Really?
It's crazy, right?
That is fascinating.
So, speaking of psychology, this book talks about empathy being super important in UX.
Yeah.
Do you think that's really possible to achieve, though, when you're designing for
That's a great question.
potentially millions of users?
It's definitely a challenge, for sure.
Yeah.
And honestly, one that we still struggle with as a field,
Yeah.
but that's where user research comes in.
Okay.
You've got to get out there and talk to real people.
Right.
Understand their frustrations, their needs, their aspirations. Otherwise, you're just designing in a vacuum.
The book dives into different types of digital products.
Yeah.
Brand websites, promotional stuff, content sources like Surface Magazine,
Right.
task-based apps, e-learning platforms, even social networks.
Right.
But I feel like these lines are getting blurrier and blurrier these days.
They really are. Yeah.
Like, isn't Instagram a content source and a social network and a promotional platform all at the same time?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a great point.
It's like, what is it?
It's hard to categorize these things anymore.
Totally.
And I think that's what makes UX so fascinating right now.
Okay.
These categories are constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And look at the rise of immersive experiences like AR and VR.
Oh, for sure.
That's a whole new frontier for UX designers.
Yeah, that's wild.
We have to figure out how to create meaningful experiences in these new spaces.
So, okay, you're a UX designer,
Mm-hmm.
but then this book throws in information. Architects, interaction designers, UI designers,
Right.
product designers, user researchers.
Yeah.
It's like a whole UX army.
And don't forget content strategists.
Oh, right.
Seriously, it takes a village to create great user experiences.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think this diversity of roles is a good thing.
Okay.
Each person brings their own expertise to the table,
Yeah.
and it creates a more well-rounded final product.
I can see how it could get messy, though, with so many cooks in the kitchen.
Oh, absolutely.
Have you ever worked on a project where it felt like
Many times.
there were just too many voices
Yeah.
and not enough direction?
Yeah, for sure.
Hold that thought. We'll come back to that story in a bit.
Okay.
I want to get into this next section because this is where it gets really interesting. Company culture.
Yeah.
I never really thought about how much that could impact UX design.
It's huge.
But this book makes a strong case that it's huge.
Oh, yeah.
Makes sense if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
A company that really values design is going to invest in it.
Totally.
They'll have dedicated UX teams.
Yep.
They'll involve designers in decision-making. They'll prioritize user research.
Sure.
That trickles down to every aspect of the product.
Absolutely.
The book talks about design maturity, even using Envision's design maturity model as an example.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm curious about is how can you actually shift a company's culture
It's a good question.
to be more design-centric?
Yeah.
That sounds like a monumental task.
It definitely can be.
Yeah.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
But I think it starts with education.
Okay.
You've got to show stakeholders the value of design,
Mm-hmm.
how it can impact the bottom line,
Right.
how it can lead to better products and happier customers.
So it's almost like being a UX evangelist
Exactly.
within the company.
You have to be able to make the case for UX,
Yeah.
advocate for its importance.
And the book also dives into the difference between agency and in-house teams.
Mm-hmm.
Did you start out in an agency setting?
I did, actually, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was a great way to learn the ropes
Mm-hmm.
and get exposure to a wide variety of projects.
Yeah.
But I eventually made the move in-house
Oh,
because I wanted to focus on building a product over the long term.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole discussion about power distance.
Yes.
You know how hierarchical a company is.
Mm-hmm.
They even contrast Apple and Google, which is super interesting.
Oh, yeah. Those are two very different cultures.
Oh, sure.
And it's fascinating to see how those cultural differences manifest in their products.
Yeah.
You know, Apple has this very controlled, top-down approach to design,
Mm-hmm.
which results in these products that are beautiful and intuitive,
Right.
but maybe not as customizable. Google, on the other hand, has a more open and experimental culture,
Right.
which is reflected in their products' flexibility.
Yeah.
And often their slightly more chaotic interfaces.
It makes you wonder if there's a right level of power distance for good UX.
That's a tough question.
It's a tough one.
I think it depends on the specific company and the product that they're trying to create.
Okay.
But what's important is that the UX team has a seat at the table
Mm-hmm.
and their voices are heard.
Okay, so we've got design maturity,
Mm-hmm.
agency versus in-house, power distance.
Yep,
This is getting pretty deep.
it is. Yeah.
And then the book throws in this whole section about the rise of ops teams.
Yes.
Design ops, research ops, content ops.
It seems like everyone's got their own ops now.
It does.
It's true.
And I feel like it's a sign of how UX design is maturing as a field.
It is, yeah.
As the discipline grows,
Mm.
we're starting to see the need for dedicated support systems to help streamline processes and create more efficient workflows.
Yep.
So it's not just about designing the user experience anymore.
Yeah,
It's about designing the design process itself.
exactly.
Wow, okay.
And that's where these ops teams come in.
Oh,
They help to create the infrastructure that allows designers to focus on what they do best.
so I'm already starting to see how UX design is way more than just making things look pretty.
Yeah.
It's a strategic function.
Mm,
It's tied to company culture.
absolutely.
It involves this whole ecosystem of roles,
hmm
and we're just getting started.
We are. There's so much more to explore in the world of UX design.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Well, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and dive into some more of these juicy details.
sounds good. Yeah, it really is.
So much more.
A constantly changing field, too.
So let's get back to your story
Okay.
about that project with Too Many Voices.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
What happened?
Oh, man, it was a mess.
Yeah.
We were redesigning an e-commerce site.
For a major retailer, and there were just so many stakeholders involved. Marketing, sales, product, legal, you name it.
Oh, wow.
Everyone had their own opinion about what the site should look like
Yeah,
and how it should function.
today.
It was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
And we ended up with this Frankensteinian design that tried to please everyone
Right.
and ended up pleasing no one.
Oh, that's the worst.
It was a disaster.
Ouch. I bet that was a learning experience.
It definitely was.
Yeah.
It taught me the importance of clear communication,
Mm-hmm.
strong leadership,
Yeah.
and frankly, knowing when to push back.
Speaking of pushing back,
Okay.
this book mentions the importance of workshops.
Yes.
You know, getting everyone in a room to hash things out.
Right.
But I feel like workshops can be a bit of a mixed bag sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're super productive,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they're just a time suck.
Totally.
What do you think?
I totally agree.
Okay.
A well-run workshop can be a game changer, though.
Yeah.
It's a chance to bring together different perspectives,
Right.
generate ideas, build consensus.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all about having a clear purpose
Yeah.
and a skilled facilitator.
Right.
If you don't have those things, it's easy to end up with a room full of people.
Spinning your wheels.
Absolutely.
The book throws out some techniques like affinity diagramming
Mm-hmm.
and role empathy maps.
Yeah,
Have you used those much in your work?
all the time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Affinity diagramming is great for brainstorming and organizing large amounts of information.
Okay.
It's a visual way to see patterns and connections that you might not otherwise notice.
Interesting.
And role empathy maps.
Mm-hmm.
Those are essential for putting yourself in the user's shoes.
Right.
It's not enough to just know their demographics.
Yeah.
You have to understand their goals, their frustrations, their emotional state.
So it sounds like you're a big fan of workshops then.
I am.
Okay.
But like I said, they need to be done right. One of my favorite workshop formats is sketch and critique,
Oh, yeah.
or as it's sometimes called, design studio.
Mm-hmm.
It's this super fast-paced way to generate ideas and get feedback.
Okay.
Everyone in the room, not just designers,
Yeah.
sketches out their ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and then we pin them up and everyone critiques each other's work.
I bet that gets pretty competitive.
It can, yeah,
Well,
but in a good way.
right.
It pushes everyone to think outside the box
Yeah.
and not be afraid to share their ideas, even if they're rough around the edges.
Okay, so you've got your workshops,
Mm-hmm.
but this book also spends a ton of time on user research.
Yes.
Interviews, field studies, contextual inquiry,
Right.
focus groups, card sorting,
Yeah.
surveys, even A/B testing and longitudinal studies.
It's a lot.
It's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, I can feel that way for sure. I
Yeah.
think each method has its own strengths and weaknesses, though.
Okay.
The key is to choose the methods that are most appropriate
Yeah.
for the research questions you're trying to answer.
So it's not just about throwing every research method at the wall
No, definitely not.
and seeing what sticks.
No, it's about being strategic
Oh,
and choosing the methods that will give you the most useful insights.
and honestly, some of the best insights
Right.
come from combining qualitative and quantitative methods.
Absolutely.
So you get the rich, nuanced data
Mm-hmm.
from interviews and observations,
Yeah.
but then you can validate those findings
Right.
with the statistical power of surveys or analytics.
Exactly.
The book also talks about personas,
Mm-hmm.
those fictional characters based on user research.
Yeah.
I always thought those were a bit cheesy,
I can see why you would think that.
but maybe I'm wrong.
They can be cheesy if they're not done right.
Oh.
But when they're based on solid research
Yeah.
and used effectively,
Mm-hmm.
personas can be incredibly powerful tools.
Okay.
They give you a shared understanding of who you're designing for,
Right.
and they help you to make more user-centered decisions.
This-
It's like having your target user in the room with you,
Yeah.
even if they're not physically present.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light. And then there's all this visual mapping stuff.
Yes.
Site maps, process maps,
Mhm.
journey maps.
Right.
I'm a visual learner, so I can see how this would be helpful.
I am too.
But is it really necessary?
Absolutely. Visualizing things helps you to understand the complexities of the user experience.
Okay.
A sitemap gives you a bird's eye view of the website structure
Mhm.
and how all the pages are connected.
Okay.
A process map or task flow breaks down the steps a user takes to complete a specific task,
Right.
which helps you to identify potential pain points.
Okay.
And then a journey map zooms out even further to show the user's entire experience with a product or service,
Wow.
from their initial awareness to their ongoing engagement.
Okay.
These maps are essential for identifying areas for improvement
Mm-hmm.
and creating a more seamless user experience.
So, okay, you've done your research.
Mm-hmm.
You've created your personas.
Yeah,
You've mapped out the user journey.
right.
Now what?
Now it's time to start designing.
Okay.
And that's where wireframes and prototypes come in.
Okay.
A wireframe is like a blueprint for the design.
Mm-hmm.
It's a low fidelity representation that focuses on the structure and functionality of the interface
Okay.
without getting bogged down in the visual details.
So no colors or anything like that?
No, not at this stage.
Interesting.
A prototype, on the other hand, is more interactive.
Okay.
It allows users to actually click through the design
Mm-hmm.
and get a feel for how it works.
So it's like testing out the design before you actually build it.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
And that's crucial because it allows you to identify usability issues early on
Mm-hmm.
and make changes before you've invested a lot of time and money in development.
Okay, so you've got your wireframes, you've got your prototypes,
Yeah.
you're ready to launch.
Almost.
But wait, this book throws in all these universal design principles.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like, hold on, there's more.
There's always more.
And it's important stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
These principles are based on best practices,
Mm-hmm.
research in human-computer interaction,
Right.
and they're essential for creating products that are usable and enjoyable for a wide range of people.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about making things look pretty.
Nope. It's about making things work well
Go.
for everyone, regardless of their abilities or disabilities.
Okay, I'm listening.
All right.
Tell me more about these principles.
Well, there are principles related to visual design,
Okay.
like unity, hierarchy, balance, and simplicity.
Mm.
These are all about creating designs that are visually appealing and easy to understand.
Okay.
And then there are principles related to interaction design,
Okay.
like affordance, movement, gestures, and feedback.
Mm-hmm.
These are all about making sure that interactions are intuitive and efficient.
Got it.
And then there are principles related to psychology,
No.
like flow, gamification, and social proof.
Interesting.
These are all about tapping into human psychology to
Yeah.
create more engaging and persuasive designs.
Whew. That's a lot to keep in mind.
It is, yeah.
And then there's content strategy.
Right.
I'll admit, I used to think content was just something you slapped on at the end.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
But this book argues that it's a crucial part of the UX design process.
It really is.
Why is that?
Because content is how you communicate with your users.
Right.
It's how you tell your story, how you explain your product, how you guide users through the experience.
Okay.
If your content is confusing, irrelevant, or poorly written,
Yeah.
it's going to negatively impact the user experience no matter how beautiful your design is.
Okay, so content matters.
Yes,
Got it.
it does.
But where do you even start with content strategy?
Well, the book recommends conducting content audits
Okay.
to assess your existing content, defining your message architecture, creating content matrices, establishing content governance plans,
Right.
and developing editorial calendars.
Oh, that sounds like a whole job in itself.
It can be,
Yeah.
but it's worth it
Okay.
to invest the time and effort up front to create a solid content strategy.
Right.
It'll pay off in the long run by ensuring that your content is consistent, high quality, and meets your users' needs.
All right, so we've covered a ton of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about workshops, user research, personas, mapping, wireframing, prototyping, universal design principles, content strategy.
Right.
My head is spinning.
I bet.
But I feel like we're missing one crucial step.
What's that?
Testing.
You're right.
Yeah.
Testing is essential
Okay.
for validating your design decisions and making sure that your product is actually usable.
Right.
And that's where usability testing comes in.
Okay, so tell me everything I need to know about usability testing.
Okay, well, there are different types of usability testing,
Okay.
each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
Yeah, so you've got moderated and unmoderated testing. With moderated testing, there's a facilitator there who guides the user through the test, asking questions, observing their behavior.
Okay.
It's more personal, it allows for deeper insights, but it's also more time-consuming and expensive.
So unmoderated testing is like the DIY version.
Exactly. It's often done remotely.
Okay.
Users completing tasks on their own time, cheaper and faster, and you can reach a larger audience.
Right.
But you lose that face-to-face interaction.
Okay. Yeah.
You also have to be really careful about how you design the tasks to make sure they're clear and easy to follow.
And this book talks about qualitative versus quantitative testing.
Right.
What's the difference there?
Qualitative testing is all about understanding the why
Okay.
behind user behavior. You're looking for patterns in their responses,
Right.
observing their body language, trying to get a sense of their overall experience.
Okay.
Quantitative testing, on the other hand, is all about the numbers.
Right.
You're measuring things like task completion rates, error rates, and time on task.
So, like with user research, it's about choosing the right tool for the job.
Precisely.
Okay.
And often, the best approach is to combine both qualitative and quantitative methods.
Yeah.
That way you get a more holistic understanding of what's working and what's not.
All right. So, you've tested your design. You've made some tweaks.
Yeah.
You're finally ready to launch.
Okay.
But the book doesn't end there. It
Right.
talks about launch versus release.
Yes.
What's the distinction?
Launch is that big moment,
Yeah.
the first time your product is out in the wild.
Okay.
Release, on the other hand, refers to subsequent updates and improvements.
Got it.
And that's a key point that this book drives home.
Okay.
UX design is an iterative process. It doesn't end at launch.
So it's like you're constantly tweaking and refining
Absolutely.
based on user feedback and data.
Exactly.
That's what makes it so exciting.
It is.
You're always learning, always evolving, always trying to create a better experience for your users.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Wow. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From defining UX design to exploring company culture, mastering research techniques to embracing the power of workshops, from wireframing and prototyping to launching and iterating.
It's a lot.
It's clear that UX design is a complex and multifaceted field.
It really is.
And it's a field that's constantly evolving.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
As technology changes and user expectations shift,
Right.
UX designers need to be adaptable and stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
Speaking of staying ahead of the curve,
Okay.
one thing that really stood out to me in this book was the
Yeah.
emphasis on sustainability in UX design.
Oh, that's interesting.
I never really thought about the environmental impact of digital products before.
Yeah, it's something that's becoming increasingly important.
Yeah.
And for good reason.
Right.
Digital products have a real-world impact. From the energy they consume to the electronic waste they generate.
So UX designers have a responsibility to consider that,
Absolutely.
the environmental impact of their work, and to find ways to create more sustainable digital experiences.
I think so, yeah.
So it's not just about designing for the user.
Right.
It's about designing for the planet.
Exactly. It gives a whole new meaning to the idea of user-centered design.
Totally.
Yeah.
We need to start thinking about the needs of all users,
Yeah?
including future generations, who will inherit the planet we leave behind.
It's a big responsibility.
It is.
But it's also a huge opportunity.
Well, that's a pretty inspiring note to end on.
It is, yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling energized to go out and create some positive change through UX design.
Me too.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with me.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listener, I hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and given you a deeper understanding of the power and potential of UX design.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Now go out there and make something amazing.